Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I wanted to talk to you briefly about my perspective on warranty work and, how you should handle this, or how I handle. I suppose I shouldn't give anybody a should on this. But anyways, how I handle the issue of goods arriving on my table with problems, with defects, etc. And, talk a little bit about some of the intricacies here. The thing that actually made me think about that is this little guy right here. This is a bearing that came out of the James Brand knives barns right here. And you can see here that the bearing is missing one of the balls. This doesn't actually matter in any way, shape, or form, but in a $600 knife, not a great look. They sent me a new bearing. I just actually replaced it, during which time I thought, hey, I should do a video about this. But nonetheless, this is a case of, talk to the manufacturer, reach out to things, and figure it out. But anyways, my approach to this is, and by the way, this is mostly a spoken thing. I just got a couple of examples on the table here. My approach to this kind of varies a little bit. Actually varies a fair amount, and there are a couple of different perspectives that I know that people take and people prefer out of this. So let's say something shows up on my table with a defect. One of the complicating factors with this is actually loans. One of the reasons why I'm not doing very much loaned gear, and these days I'm mostly only taking on loaned gear if it's something that is really, really hard to get, or really uncommon, unusual, etc., or really expensive, and it's not something I'd be interested in picking up on my own. But nonetheless, I'm not as interested in loaned gear, especially coming from private owners, because if there's a defect with the product, I don't know whether it's inherent to the product or it's something that's come about by virtue of their abuse, right? In some cases, I know the person very well, and I know that they're not abusive towards their tools, but in other cases, for instance, if something's got vertical blade play, it's hard to tell whether that's a defect of the knife itself or it's because they were, last week they were trying to baton it through a freaking tree, right? This is why I don't borrow knives from Advanced Knife Bro. That's a joke. He's awesome and takes care of his stuff, except when he doesn't. Anyways, I digress. Advanced Knife Bro's great, but nonetheless, this is one of the reasons why loans are a little bit problematic, right? Then we'll put those aside for the moment. Let's think about stuff that's coming straight from the factory, whether this is via a retailer when I buy it myself, or whether this is something that is provided to me directly by the manufacturer as a review sample. Sometimes I will get things out of the box and they will not be working great. In some cases, it's a little tiny thing that doesn't actually matter. For instance, I would class this bearing issue as there. I could have not taken this knife apart and never noticed this issue, and I don't think it ever would have caused problems, right? It's only by virtue of the price of the knife that's something that it needs to be perfection. And it's a weird issue too, right? And caused by the factor. Anyways, I digress. Sometimes, though, it can be a more substantial issue. There's blade play, there's, those kinds of things. How do I handle it in that situation? Well, to start with, there is a level at which I just won't go ahead. And I tell all the makers I work with, like, look, if you send me something that is just bad outright, I'm not going to make the video. And this is something where if there is an outright safety issue, if the piece is so bad, whether because of a poor detent so that it comes flying open, with an errant breath, whether it's because of a strong blade play that won't adjust away, whether it's, those are situations in which it's just like, no, I'm going to return this, because I haven't taken it apart yet at that point, but nonetheless, because you shouldn't return things you took apart, or I will just send it back to the maker and say, I'm sorry, this is just not, no, I can't do that. The reason I do that, rather than going through the warranty process there, is because, honestly, if they're not able to put in the effort, the quality control to that level, where if they're sending things with issues that are big enough that they are actually a safety issue potentially, then I'm not interested in giving that company or that brand the time of day, right? If you send me a flashlight and your flashlight doesn't work out of the box and I've tried all the troubleshooting steps, then clearly you are doing no quality control, and it's not interesting to me to, give you publicity on my channel, right? So there is definitely a level at which, when there were major safety issues, or when it's just completely busted out of the box and it's clear that nobody did any quality control on that, those are times where it's just like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in going ahead. I'll send the item back to the maker, or I'll return it back to the retailer and just move on with my life, because it's not worth giving that a thing. And there are definitely good companies. Any good company will have, mix-ups from time to time. I get that. But at the same time, especially where it's a pattern, right? There are companies that basically have no quality control but have a decent warranty to try and make up for it. I don't like that. right? Because especially for overseas. Anyway, so I digress. There is a class of problems with which it's just like, no, I'm sorry, we're done here. I'm not interested in going further. If this one passed QC, no, we're good. But then there is definitely the intermediate level where you could get something like this that doesn't particularly matter. You could get something where, for instance, on this guy, this is the tactile turn rock wall. This wasn't really a quality control issue, but when this first came to me, the detent on it was a little bit weak. I wouldn't even have put it like it would have been bad rather than ugly, but it definitely wasn't very strong. And this is a case where actually Tactile Turn requested to get the knife back so that they could fix the detent, so that they could improve it. And this is, so anyways, we'll talk more about that in a second here. But those are the kinds of situations where we come on the fence, right? Where we could go through the warranty process, or we could just review it, or we could, eat the whole thing. But, for me, where I land on that is sort of different. There is a school of thought that says, hey, any time that something comes across your table that has a problem, you should do the full review and you should do the full warranty process first. You should give the maker every chance to make it right. And you know what? I can see that perspective, and especially from the perspective of the maker, I can see that, or in some cases the retailer, I can see that being a fair choice. The problem with that is a couple of things. A, time. Oh my God, is it time intensive to do a warranty issue, right? This adds another 6 to 8 hours and, additional shipping costs and things like that to something that, maybe not 6 to 8 hours, depending on the warranty process, but it is something that is, already going to eat a fair amount of time in my life. And I have a dance card that is overly full. I have an entire line of things on the end of my desk right freaking now over there that need to be reviewed. And so investing that time isn't great. The other argument that a lot of people give for this is, well, we want to know how their warranty process is. And that's great. That's a really good idea. But the problem is you're not going to find that out through my experience. I am not so optimistic as to believe that makers are going to treat me exactly in the same way that they would a random jackass on the street. And if I email the maker and say, hey, I got a problem, I sort of expect that I'm going to be treated differently than somebody who just out of the blue emails and says the same thing, right? And so, as a result, are you really learning much about their warranty process from me, from my experience? No, probably not, right? It could be that I get a great experience. I get the Cadillac service where most people are getting the freaking, I don't know, who's a bad car company? They're getting the Lada version of the service, right? That could be, I assume they're bad if they still exist. Anyways, I digress. I assume that there might be some differentiation there. And so we don't really learn that much about the warranty service that way otherwise. The other thing is, at some level, I don't know, it's a little bit awkward, especially when you get something that is not great, that could be fixable, but is also could be usable without fixation. It's not great to kind of sweep it under the rug using warranty issues, right? And this is where transparency comes in, and I'll talk about that in a bit here. But the other thing that kind of comes into play here is past experience, right? If a company has a well-established history of excellence, so to speak, if they are a company that has done really well over and over and over again, and they send me something that has a problem, I am much more inclined to work with them and say, hey, guys, you got pretty unlucky here. The one you sent me's got an issue. We should go through and fix that, right? Because, well, I know, generally speaking, that they're doing good work and that they just lost the statistical lottery today. Is that entirely fair? Perhaps not, but at the same time, I believe in rewarding companies that I know to have a history of excellence, and that's one of the ways I can do so. But again, I want to be transparent about that, so that's why I said, for instance, although Tactile Knife is a brand new company, Tactile Turn is not, and that's why I said very explicitly that they asked to get this guy back and to repair that detent. Because, well, again, it's not really a repair, it's just an improvement. Because I want to be open about that, and that's why, for instance, with the James brand thing here, I'm putting up my original disassembly with the missing ball in there, and then this video, and I'll talk about it in the actual review as well. Like, the ball was missing, they sent a new one, I fixed it, but I want to make sure that I'm not, like, pulling hiding that, right? If anything comes on my table gets fixed, I'm going to talk about that, by and large, right? In fact, I think always, I'm just saying by and large because I should probably hedge these things because I've been doing this a long time, right? Anyways, I digress. So that's an issue. The other thing that comes into play is the novelty of the product. One of the benefits of being a reviewer is that very often I will get something that is brand new. And an example of this is the Tactile Knife here. here. This was something that this is their very first pocket knife. And so the fact that they wanted to work on the detent a little bit more afterwards, doesn't bother me at all. In fact, that's a benefit. That's a general speaking win, right? Or if I get something that is fresh off of the product line, it is one of the very first ones, and I discover an issue, usually I'll treat it as, it looks like you're not quite ready for prime time yet. And I'll send it back and say, hey, why don't you give me one from later in the run when you got all the kinks worked out, so to speak. Or I'll let them repair it, and because oftentimes that's a benefit. And so again, I'll be transparent about that. But yeah, so that's the other factor that can make me much more likely to go through the warranty process. If the thing I'm looking at is a brand new product and I'm getting one of the first ones off the line, I'm liable to treat that as like oh, hey, there's an issue in this one. You might want to address that for future ones, rather than like, oh, you suck, or something like that. So anyways, that's kind of my perspective on this. There are definitely the people who believe that every single thing should go through the full warranty process without kind of the understanding of the time and the fact that my going through the warranty process wouldn't teach me that. Oh, and I'm sorry. The other way that I can handle this, and the way that I often do, is just by talking about it in the review. Saying something like, this particular, and that's not the case for either of these guys, by the way, but this particular knife has lock stick, and it hasn't gone away. Or, this particular knife has a little bit of side-to-side blade that won't go away, etc. Or I'll mention it very explicitly. There's nothing really more I can do. I could send it to the maker, but it's not worth that. But I'll mention that explicitly. Or in some cases, I've sent things in for repair, and I've got something back that was also defective, and I'll talk about that as well, right? But again, sometimes I'll just go that route. Like, I'm not even going to bother with the warranty. I'll just talk about it as it is, and if the piece is safe enough to carry on its own, I'll just mention that as a part of the bad. There's a quality control lottery in here, and if yours is like this one, send it home. But that's kind of the other perspective. So I know there are a lot of people who have different opinions on how this kind of thing should be handled. Right, there's the send everything in, there's the, brutal honesty, review what's on your table, and then there's some place in the middle. And the approach that I've settled on is, some place in the middle. But the thing that I try to do all the time is transparency. I try to say, this guy got sent in for warranty issues, or this guy got, the maker wanted to tweak this guy after the fact, or, they sent me one that was missing a single ball, and they immediately sent a whole replacement bearing with it, with all the balls in it, so to speak. I'll mention that very directly. And then from there, you can take that as you will, right? You can do exactly what you want with that information. You can say, oh, I'm never working with them again. You can say, oh, great, they did right. Yeah, so that's kind of my perspective. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts down below on this, and if you've got a channel or if you're thinking about starting one, what's your perspective going to be? But it's a tricky one of those things to negotiate, and it's something that I've sort of, I don't know that my opinions have changed that much, but especially now that I'm not doing loans, it's a little bit easier to work with, right? But anyways, there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.